Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever noticed how incredibly therapeutic it feels to just let loose and vent about a bad day? Yet sometimes, the more you complain, the worse you actually feel? It's kind of a fascinating paradox, right? While complaining feels like this necessary pressure release valve, the underlying science reveals that it might actually be rewiring your brain for chronic negativity. But here is the really good news. Just as we can wire our brains for distress, we can absolutely rewire them for resilience. Today, we're going to look at exactly how to fix it.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, your brain on complaining. Second, the right way to vent. Third, cognitive restructuring. Fourth, building healthy communication. And finally, preventing the spiral.
Section 1. Your brain on complaining, or the physical toll of negativity. Let's start by looking at what is actually happening inside your head.
Now, you might be wondering, and you might have even seen headlines making this extremely bold claim, does 30 minutes of complaining actually physically shrink your brain? It's a viral concept, usually linked to the hippocampus, which is your brain's memory and learning center.
Well, that 30-minute claim, actually, scratch that, it's a total myth. Your brain is perfectly built to handle short spikes of the stress hormone cortisol. Once a brief stressor passes, your cortisol levels drop back down, and literally zero structural damage occurs. The real danger isn't a 30-minute venting session. It's chronic stress, sustained over weeks or even months. That is what causes measurable atrophy in the hippocampus and weakens the prefrontal cortex.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that not all complaining is created equal. There are 5 distinct categories. Solution-oriented complaining is actually a positive thing. It wakes up your problem-solving prefrontal cortex. Venting is a healthy, time-limited release. But look at the bottom 2, rumination and chronic habitual complaining. This is where we see endless looping and automatic negativity. These are the danger zones that reshape your baseline neural wiring and flood your body with sustained cortisol. Take a second to audit your own behaviors right now. Which category do you fall into most often?
The reason we get so trapped in those bottom categories of complaining comes down to this absolutely foundational rule of neuroplasticity. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Basically, your brain actually rewards you for complaining. When you vent, you get a quick release of dopamine, the pleasure and reward chemical. If you complain with a friend, you get a hit of oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Your brain starts to crave this reward loop, literally making pessimism your default biological setting. It's like paving a dirt road into a superhighway for negative thoughts. Section 2. The right way to vent. Navigating the social sweet spot. So if venting can be healthy, but complaining can be toxic, how do we express our thoughts safely? We really need to find the social Goldilocks zone. Healthy venting should wrap up in about 10 to 15 minutes, leaving you feeling physically lighter and moving toward a resolution. Harmful rumination, on the other hand, is just endless repetition that leaves you way more agitated. And here is a pretty wild fact. If you ruminate at a friend for too long, their brain will actually absorb secondhand cortisol through mirror neurons. You are literally transferring your physiological stress response directly into their body. No way, right? But what happens when both friends are equally stressed? A fascinating study mapping the moment-to-moment dynamics of friends discussing stress found that the sweet spot of mutual obsession, where both friends perfectly align their ruminative intensity, only happens about 25% of the time. When it's one-sided, it completely exhausts the listener. But when both friends actively co-ruminate and get intensely stuck in the problem together, it's actually kind of magic. In fact, as the saying goes, when we ruminate alone, we are stuck. When we ruminate together, we might just be solving the problem. This mutual obsession makes both people feel significantly more supported and, paradoxically, closer to a resolution. The shared emotional intensity makes the heavy lifting of processing those feelings so much lighter. Let's move to Section 3, cognitive restructuring, rewiring your mind. We know how to vent externally now, but how do we fix those negative loops internally? This brings us to a core technique of cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive restructuring is a 4-step process designed to shift you from being a passive victim to an active problem solver. You record the situation, you isolate the one automatic thought causing the most distress, you explore different angles, and finally, you craft an alternative, functional response. Let's look at step 3 in action with a totally relatable scenario. Yvette assumes her friend Annika didn't text back because Annika secretly dislikes her. We've all been there, right? But without evidence, this is just an assumption.
By probing for alternative points of view, Yvette might realize Annika could just be busy, trying to cut down on screen time. Or, hey, maybe she's feeling socially anxious herself. Finding those alternative explanations dramatically reduces the emotional sting of that very first automatic thought.
And this brilliantly illustrates our Goldilocks paradox once again. Notice that the alternative response here isn't just blind, toxic positivity. We aren't pretending that failing the exam is a wonderful thing. Cognitive restructuring isn't about denial. It's about developing a balanced, sophisticated viewpoint that pragmatically manages the situation. It lowers your emotional temperature while keeping you firmly grounded in reality.
Section 4. Building healthy communication to prevent relapse. Once we've restructured our thoughts, we have to go back out and interact with the world again. Maintaining long-term mental resilience means we absolutely need communication skills that actively prevent us from relapsing into our old negative patterns. When recovering from a negative mindset or even an addiction, how we communicate dictates our success. Passive or aggressive behaviors erode trust, create isolation, and cause conflicts, which are massive triggers for relapse. By actively replacing those habits with assertive communication, using I statements to express needs clearly and set firm boundaries, we prevent the misunderstandings and resentment that drive us right back to complaining and despair.
Now, if you are on the listening end, you can use this simple 3-step reframing technique. If a friend is stuck in that unfruitful rumination hamster wheel, actively listen to them to learn the details, gently offer a constructive, different view, and then allow them to react. It's an incredibly powerful way to help a friend step out of a spiral without absorbing their secondhand cortisol.
Finally, Section 5, Preventing the Spiral and Building Long-Term Resilience. We've reached the final stage of our journey. How do we build daily systems that keep these negative thought loops permanently at bay? First off, you have to know your early warning signs. Relapse, whether into addiction, depression, or just chronic complaining, never, ever happens overnight. It's a gradual slide. Are you pulling away from loved ones, skipping your sleep routines, romanticizing past bad habits, bottling up your emotions? Let's do a quick audit of your behavior right now. Catching these subtle shifts early is the absolute key to stopping a spiral right in its tracks. To combat those warning signs, you need reliable coping mechanisms. For instance, a 2021 review showed that mindfulness-based relapse prevention significantly reduces cravings and depressive symptoms. Furthermore, research out of UC Davis proves that active gratitude, like journaling specific things you are thankful for, literally reverses negative neuroplasticity. It increases dopamine and reduces cortisol, structurally rewiring your brain toward positivity. Combine that with regular physical activity and a structured daily routine, and you build an incredibly resilient mind.
So, the crucial point is this. A recent 2024 study by Venkateswaran and Thiramalai tracked patients recovering from addiction. The individuals who successfully avoided relapse all used adaptive coping. They actively planned, accepted their reality, and sought out support. The ones who relapsed relied on maladaptive coping, like denial and self-blame. Your coping strategy literally determines your outcome.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. If your absolute best friend came to you, stuck in the exact same negative thought loop you are struggling with right now, what alternative response would you craft for them? Let's be honest, it is so much easier to show compassion to others than it is to ourselves. Step out of your own head, apply these tools to your own life today, and start rewiring your brain for the better. Thanks for joining me, and keep learning.